Welcome back to Learning with Merit. Today we are going to cover everything about electronic mail. So we're going to look at what electronic mail is, the parts of an email address, ports and protocols associated with email, email clients and servers, how email itself works, what are email headers, how to use some email search filters, and how to create some email inbox filters. And we're going to go ahead and click send on this real quick. And if we go over here to our other email address, let's reload. Let's see how fast it gets here and whether or not it gets sent to spam. Oh, not quite yet. Oh, there it was. And here we go. So here's what we're covering in the video today. So what is electronic mail? Electronic mail is sort of a method of exchanging digital messages between people through electronic devices. So instead of doing the traditional mail where we would write a letter and then send it in the post and it would go out into the wide network and then eventually be delivered to the person we're looking for many days later, right? Take a long time. We use computer networks to do the same thing. So it's nearly identical to how you might have written a letter in the past, but now we use email to send this information nearly instantaneously to other people, and we can include things like attachments and things like that. So it's pretty simple. It's just electronic mail. Next, we're going to look at parts of an email address. And so if you've ever used email, which you most likely have, especially if you're watching this video, what you can tell is that you always have an email address, but maybe you're not always sure about what is going on with the email address. So here I am in a Gmail account on the internet. Of course, you can see that's mail.google.com up there in the URL. And this email was sent from learningwithmerit@outlook.com. And so there are some clear parts of this address. That part, and whoops, almost got it. That part right there. So we have these three parts of the email address, and it's good to know what these three parts are. So for that, we've got a quick little image here. And this image covers a few more things than what we're looking at right now, but we're going to zoom in here and take a look at this. So here I have my two email accounts that I use with Gmail and Outlook for demonstrating stuff. And we have the first part up here, which is the username. Then there is an @ symbol and then a domain name. And if you have watched my other videos where I talked about what domain names are and URLs and client server model type stuff, you'll see that we have Gmail is the domain name, and .com would be that top level domain. Outlook, of course, would be the domain, and then .com would be the top level domain there as well. So these come from URLs, and these are actual like server addresses. So these translate, Gmail and Outlook translate to IP addresses. And then this username is how I associate with these particular IP addresses who I am on there and who's sending the mail, who's receiving the mail, that type of thing. You will also see this called the local part because it's not always a username. So you'll see local part at domain like that. So pretty simple, just username at domain name, and that domain name, of course, it's important we know, translates to an IP address on the internet. Next, we're going to look at some ports and protocols associated with email and how the email works. And of course, I have a diagram here we're going to talk a little bit more about later in this video, but right now I just want to show you the ports and protocols that are involved. So here we have SMTP and SMTPS. So SMTP is the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and it's a standard protocol we use for transferring email. And so what you'll see is I seem to be sending here and sending here, right? Over here, I'm sending here and sending here. So when we're sending that email or transferring emails between servers, right, we are using the SMTP protocol. And it's how these servers talk with each other to send your mail. Now there are two different ports that are associated with this because we have two different protocols. Really, they're basically the same protocol, but one's just a little different. The port for SMTP here is port 25, and you see I used :25 there. And then for SMTPS, we've got :587. So that's the port for SMTPS. And of course, I show that over here and here and here in our diagram. Now, the difference is that the S stands for secure, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means after I talk about the other protocols. So when we're receiving mail, you'll see right here, receiving mail, and right here, receiving mail. We have sort of 4 different protocols, but really it's just 2. So we have IMAP. IMAP is the Internet Message Access Protocol. And it's the standard protocol that allows us to retrieve and manage emails on a remote server. So like here's the server here, and we're retrieving this to the client. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, of course, later. But this is a little bit different than the other one, POP3. It's different in that what IMAP does is it actually doesn't store the emails locally, meaning on the client device. What it does is it keeps them here on the server. And this gives us a little more flexible access because maybe you have multiple different devices that all access the same email, and it's a little better to have them access it without storing it on the device itself, because then you wouldn't be able to access it. Our other one is POP3 and POP3S. And POP3 stands for Post Office Protocol version 3. And it's an email retrieval protocol that is used to download emails from the mail server. So what we do is we will take the emails from here, download them to the client, and then they will be accessible on your device. And they usually, when you use POP3, they're typically also deleted from the server once you download them to the client. So for IMAP, the protocol for IMAP, the port is 143 here. So you see :143, that is our IMAP port. IMAPS is on :993. POP3 is going to be on :110, and POP3S is going to be on :995. And we'll see that over here as well. So 143, 993, 110, and 995. IMAP, IMAPS, POP3, and POP3S. We see those over here as well. Now, what is the S for? So we see S in SMTPS, we see S in IMAPS, and POP3S, we see the S. The S stands for secure. It means the protocol is running on top of an encryption layer. And what that encryption layer is either TLS for Transport Layer Security or SSL for Secure Sockets Layer. And these are cryptographic protocols, meaning they are for encryption. They are used to create secure communication channels between 2 different parties on a network. So here's one party, this client, here's one party, the server, right? Here's one party, the client, here's one party, the server. Or here's one party, the server, here's one party, another server, right? And we use these protocols to protect our data because you don't want people just reading your emails when you send them over the network, right? So we need a way to encrypt our emails so that they are protected. And one of them is actually superseding the other. We call that TLS. TLS, or Transport Layer Security, has superseded SSL, meaning that it is more commonly used today because it tends to be more secure and just better for our purposes. Let's talk about some common email clients that are out there. So first here we have Gmail, which is one of the most commonly used mail applications out there, and you may be familiar with something like this. It is, of course, owned and operated by Google and is integrated with a lot of different people's jobs and schools and all sorts of things out there, right? So this is Gmail and sort of what it looks like. And it's not actually a true client as we think of as a client, but it does the job of a client. So it's sort of a webmail interface, or if you have like a mobile app, for example, that goes with Gmail. Now, what a web interface is it's used to connect to email servers through the protocols like IMAP and POP3 are, but they're not really true clients. But they, like I said, they provide the functionality of a client. And then you access your email through this interface, much like you would any other email client, and it is just not technically installed on your device. So we can actually look through all of our emails here. We can look through the inbox and see these different things that we've got going on here. See all of the stuff in our mail, and of course any unread messages. The next one is Outlook, and Outlook is primarily the other client that gets used. So Gmail and Outlook are the two very common ones, and they also will be used in jobs. I see Outlook used in jobs more, and things like Gmail used more in schools, if you're thinking about that. But Outlook is interesting in that it's similar to Gmail. Here you have you've got a lot of different stuff that Outlook is doing, but basically you still have your inbox. It also is a web interface, so it's not technically downloaded to your device, although you can download an actual client that installs from Outlook on your device. Just most people don't, because they prefer the web type interface. And we can see our emails and read through stuff and do all sorts of things there as well. The next one, and a extremely common one, pretty much everybody ends up having one of these accounts if you own an Apple device. It is iCloud Mail, and we're not going to be able to show you that because unfortunately you have to have an Apple device that you're going to use and create an Apple ID, and there's a whole lot of information that goes into that, and we're just not going to share that here on YouTube. But the point is, iCloud Mail is another way that you can access email and have an email address on the internet, and you probably even have one if you have an Apple device, because I believe it usually makes one for you whenever you sign in and give all the personal information over to Apple whenever you use one of their devices. Another excellent web client, this one's actually installed on my computer here. This one is called Thunderbird, and Thunderbird is sort of the Mozilla version. So you remember Mozilla Firefox, we talked about that, but this is a free software, and it can be used as an actual email client that sits on your computer. It can download, it can use different protocols. If we scroll down here, I've left it on set up an existing email account, so we're going to set up one here. And if we look here, we have some different configurations we can use. We can use the IMAP protocol or the POP3 protocol. And of course, what you'll see is it says IMAP, SSL TLS, and outgoing SMTP, SSL TLS, right? And you'll even see that something interesting. It says imap.gmail.com and smtp.gmail.com. Those are pretty interesting. Might look up what those are and what they're doing. But basically, we have the IMAP for receiving the mail because we want to leave it on the servers, and SMTP for sending the mail. If I wanted to, however, if I wanted to use the POP3 protocol, it would download and potentially delete my emails off the server and only store them here on this device. But I'm going to leave it on IMAP for now because that's the most common one that everyone uses. And then if I hit done here, it's going to want me to sign in to Learning with Merit real quick. I'll do that and be right back. All right, now we're logged in, and you can see that this has some of the same features, but it's actually downloaded on my device. And of course, Mozilla is free, so they're always looking for support. We're going to drag this over to the side. There's a lot of different things you can do, but you can see you got a bunch of emails here. This is my inbox. I've got drafts, sent mail, that sort of stuff, but it's actually on my device. And then you can see local folders like trash and outbox. So those are 4 very common email clients that people use. Of course, I got a Google security alert because I went ahead and logged into something, so I get one of those security alerts in my emails. But we got Gmail, Outlook, which is owned by Microsoft, if I didn't mention that, Apple's iCloud Mail, and then Mozilla coming in with the Thunderbird application. Now we're going to talk about how email actually works. So at the beginning of this video, I created this covered in this video email, and I sent it, and you see that it showed up here in my Outlook email. So I sent from my Gmail to my Outlook, and let's talk a little bit about what happened there. For now, for simplicity's sake, for our understanding, Gmail is going to act as our client, and Outlook is going to act as our recipient. But it could be the other way around, and we'll talk about that just a little bit too. So Gmail, I composed this email, and here we have a little diagram. So I composed my email in Gmail here, over here in the client. Now, to make sure that it gets where it's going, we must first do a little DNS lookup. So we compose and format the email in SMTP standards, and it's all ready to go. Now we need to go know, okay, where exactly am I sending this to? Now you use the recipient's address to do that, and part of that address is the domain name. So we're going to do a DNS lookup. So the DNS lookup goes out to we send a DNS lookup to a DNS server, and it returns to us an IP address of where we are going. And now we're going to send that message via SMTP or SMTPS. Traditionally now we use SMTPS all the time because we want encrypted traffic, right? So our sender client is going to send that message to the sender's SMTP server. And what the SMTP server is going to do is it's going to make sure everything's going and coming in the right direction. It's going to get all that information inside of an email header, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But it's going to send that information also via SMTP or SMTPS to the recipient's SMTP server, right? And this is going to check if everything, all of the authentication is correct and everything's good and valid. And then we're going to store that email on this particular server. Now, when the recipient client, meaning the person who's receiving the mail, over here, this would be Outlook, asks for it, it's going to reach out and say, hey, what email is new on the server? And then through IMAP or POP3, we're going to download that to the client. So it's a pretty simple process. The client is going to create an email or compose an email. It's going to be formatted in the SMTP standard. If we need to, if it's not cached, we're going to look up the domain name of the recipient's email address, receive an IP address back. Then we're going to send that information over SMTP and SMTPS to our SMTP server on the correct ports, 25 or 587. Then that one will send to the correct SMTP server for the recipient using that IP address that we looked up. Of course, SMTP and SMTPS, again, it will be stored on the recipient's server, and then when the client wants it, the client will ask for it, and with IMAP or POP3, it will receive that information. Now, if we flip this, as you see down here on the bottom, I've got it flipped, sender and recipient now. The same thing happens in the reverse direction. Let's say I wanted to reply. What I would do is I would compose an email reply. If necessary, I'd do a DNS lookup, receive an IP address of my sender's SMTP server. Then through SMTP and SMTPS, I'd send it to the SMTP server, and then it would transfer it to the recipient side SMTP server. And then when I wanted to receive that mail, I would then use IMAP or POP3 to receive it on my client. So all in all, pretty simple how email works. There's a lot of intricacy in the different protocols and stuff, but pretty much we're using everything with an S these days. It's just the regular protocol with an S on a different port so that we know that we're using the secure version with TLS or SSL secure layers there. Next, we're going to look at email headers. So just like we had email headers whenever we looked at web pages and how they work, there's, that metadata, that extra information that's sort of hidden behind the scenes that we don't see as the users every day because it's not really important to the content of the page that we're looking at. But the behind the scenes stuff, the servers, the clients, those types of things need that information in order for all of this to work. And then sometimes we see some of it, it's just displayed in a different way from that header information. So if we take a look at this, and here we have my email, and we have another email here with different information. If I want to see the headers of this email in Gmail, I'll come over here. There are three little dots. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to see Show Original. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to open up to a different page. And what we'll see here is, while this is a fairly simple message, we will see the headers for this information, and even they like to sort of make it simple for you. So here what we've got is a lot of information that's not super detailed and important, a lot of it for our understanding today, but it is important, of course, for the email. So we have like things like the date, the message ID associated with it, the subject, who it's from, who it is to, right? And then we can see some other things, some information, and then even the body of the email, as well as some other things down here that just have to do with the way that it looks. So of course the email that I sent was extremely simple. So there's not a lot of information in the headers because there's not a lot going on there. If we look at what it looks like in Outlook here, the way we can look at the email that I received, so I can click the three dots. I'm going to come down here and we're going to see view and then view message source, and what we'll see here is a little bit more information because the email was sent through Gmail's server. So when I look at it here, because I sent the message, I don't really see that much in the headers. But because there's a lot of stuff that gets added and changed as it goes, we'll see more whenever we receive the message here. And of course, you'll see some of this stuff says Microsoft, and that has to do with the server that is actually storing and then sending you this message. So here we've got received from where and received from where and some more received from stuff, right? And there's a lot of little steps maybe for that message. And then we see some things for received by and who it's for, right? In this case, some extra little information. And then what we will see is some more. A lot of this just looks like gobbledygook to us, right? Because we don't understand everything about it. But you'll see when we keep going, we'll see a few things that are important. When you look for them, we'll find from, the date, that message ID again, the subject, to these types of things are all important. And while we see some of these things in our emails, right, it can be important to know who sent them. Especially if you're getting a scam email, looking at the message headers can help you track down who might be sending it to you, even if it looks like it's from a legitimate source. So here we have the return path, and that's who sent the email, right? And of course, lots and lots of other information, but you'll notice that there were some things there that tend to show up. Here's the body of the email, for example. So this is our source that includes the header information for this. There's one more we're going to look at. Let's look at Thunderbird. So here is an example email that I sent, right? And if I want to view the source of this, what I can do is I'll come over here to More, I'll come down and I'll click on View Source, and I'll get this nice little window that shows me the source information, or the headers, right? And we'll see who it was delivered to, because this email was delivered to Learning with Merit from the Outlook address. So Outlook was the sender, Gmail was the recipient in this case, and you'll see we've got a lot of information going on here. But if we look through, again, we'll see that return path, we'll see received, who it was for. Let's see if we can find some other stuff. Come through here, see some other received information, a lot of that metadata, right? And then we'll see who it was from, to the subject line, the topic, all sorts of stuff, date information, time information, all of that, of course, in the header. And then there's the body of the text and some more. This is HTML code down here to display it. So anyway, these headers are extremely important for helping you know more about the email, especially if you're suspicious about who sent the email, where it's from, and what it traveled through, right? The different servers and information, and of course some of the authentication information that we had there. So email headers, extra information about an email. All right, now we're going to look at email search filters that you can use, and we're going to primarily focus on Gmail in the interest of time. But of course, you could use similar things in Outlook and even Thunderbird to get the job done. So what I'm talking about specifically is these right here. So things like you could use from, for example, and we could search for specific people. So from, and I could say me, of course, so I could use some person's name if they're in my contacts, or I could use a specific email address, which is usually what I do. I use a specific email address when using those. So rather than typing all these out here, what we can do is we can look at this little chart that I have. So if we need to specify the sender, we can use from. If we need to specify a recipient, we can use to. We have CC and BCC, CC for carbon copied people, BCC for blank carbon copy, meaning CC is other recipients can see who was copied in. BCC is other recipients cannot see who was copied in. And then we've got subject. We could search by the subject, like subject dinner. We can use or to search for multiple things, or we can use curly braces here to search for multiple things. So like for Amy or from David, and then the same thing here in the curly braces. We can use minus to remove certain results from what we're looking for. So we look for like dinner in the results, but we don't want movie to be included in those results. We can use around. Around is pretty useful for finding words that are close to other words. So we can use the number to say how many words apart we want them to be. So holiday, around 10 words of vacation, or secret, around 25 words of birthday, right? We can use label to search for specific labels that we have created. We can use has for things like attachments. If we want to look for an attachment, we can use has for drive, document, spreadsheet, presentation, right? Has is it's looking for something that it has or has in the video or in the email, right? And then we could look for like YouTube videos that are attached to an email. We could look for specific email lists. We could search for file names. We can specify an exact word or phrase with quotation marks. We can group multiple search terms together by using a set of parentheses. So like we could search the subject and then put dinner and movie in there. We could find things in any folder, including like the spam and the trash. And so we can say in anywhere to search for anything, anywhere in our mail for a particular thing. We can search for is important to look for important stuff, or label important. And of course, is going to be used for pretty much all of those labels. Is this, is that. I use unread quite a bit. We can look for things like has yellow star, has blue info, right? After, before, older, newer for times. We can look at older than, newer than, who it was delivered to, different categories that might have been created in Gmail, the size of the email. So we can look for really big emails and really small emails. We can look for larger and smaller. We can include values. We want to match the word exactly if we use the plus symbol. We can search by a message ID. Okay, in the header, we can look for user labels, meaning labels that you created, or non-user labels, labels that were created by Gmail in that can. Okay, so you should look up the specific ones if you're using something like Outlook or Mozilla Thunderbird, but they're all basically going to have this type of functionality that we can use to search for. Last, let's take a look at email filters. So if I want to filter my inbox in certain ways, I can do that. And of course, we're going to stick with Gmail again, just in the interest of time, but Outlook can do this and Thunderbird can do this. You just have to look for how they do it. But we're going to filter a particular message. So here I get a lot of no reply at accounts.google.com emails, and I want to filter them into a label. So I'm going to click on the three dots over here. I'm going to click on filter messages like this. I can include extra information like who it's to, what the subject has the words. You need to be very careful with has the words. You can inadvertently filter things you don't mean to. But we can go ahead and create the filter. And then I want it to skip the inbox. I want it to mark it as read, and I'm going to have it apply a label. The label that we're going to create is Google no reply, just so that I know what it's for. Create, and then importantly, I want to click also apply filter to 8 matching conversations. I'm going to click on that, click create filter. And then if I look under this label, I will see all of the no reply emails that I get from Google. And if I want to edit these filters, I can go up here to settings, go to see all settings, go to filters and blocked addresses, and you'll see I have this right here along with what it is supposed to do, and I can click on edit to change it.